get my energy up. I almost kill myself. Okay. This time we're going to talk about consequences. And I'm going to share a little something with you. It's a little saying, and that is, if I ain't in your boat, don't expect me to bail. You know, what's that mean? Just this. Unless your children are tied into the consequences that go on, why should they worry about what consequences you experience? You know, a lot of parents, their frustration is the kid does something, the parent ends up experiencing the consequences of it, and they want the child to change so that it doesn't keep happening. Well, why should it change? If I don't experience those consequences with you, what do I care what happens to you? I had one father who came to me, and his son had smashed up 3 cars. And what he wanted to talk to me about was how to talk to his son about safe driving now that he was getting him his 4th car. And I said, say anything you want, because it isn't going to matter. He knows you're going to buy him another car. And I said, but let me share with you what I had to deal with a father about a year before you got here, and he came in. He wasn't worried about what he was going to say to his son. He came to me for therapy because after his son had bashed up one car pretty badly, he bought him another, and he bought him a Jag. And this was for graduation from high school. And his son was finding out how fast it would go, and it was going very well at about 90 miles an hour when it missed the turn, wrapped itself around a telephone pole, and killed both he and his friend. And the father wasn't worried about what he was going to say to him about safe driving anymore. So, part of what you get out of this program is the child realizes from now on, my consequences are tied to your consequences. And if I want to control my consequences, I got to make sure I don't cause a lot of consequences for you that you won't tolerate anymore. Because if I don't act as an adult and you get a lot of consequences you don't like, guess what? You're going to bring a lot of consequences on me that I don't like. Now, I think it's important to understand that in real life, if we're not in the same boat, I'm not going to be nearly as concerned if yours is sinking. You want your kids to be concerned about the consequences they are creating for you. Make sure that they take part in them. I'm going to give you an example. It doesn't always have to be something bad, but it can be worthwhile and it can be educational. My sons, well, I had 3 sons and 2 daughters, so. He had one of these muscle building things. It was just a simple thing. It had a kind of a padded end on it and a tube, one inside the other, and then a giant spring in it. And you push it together. I think it probably cost all of $12. Was not something that's going to put you into the world championships for most anything. But it was fun for a 12-year-old. And he was well, like any 12-year-old would do, he wanted to find how much you could compress it. Well, he didn't want to find out this way. He decided to put one end against the wall and push on the other end. You know, get all of your force on one end. Well, there wasn't anything really bad about that, except that he happened to do it between 2 large windows. And at one point as he was pushing, he got a little bit off-center, and it went zing. And of course, as soon as it got to the place where the window was, it went zing right out through the window. And the window shattered into pieces, and he's going like, ooh. Well, now, I would not call it the greatest thinking and problem solving in the world. On the other hand, he wasn't thinking about the fact that that might happen. So there was no sense doing anything that would involve what you would call punishment. See, that's why I stay away from the word. But there were consequences. Now the question is, what are the consequences? Well, what were the consequences to me? I had a broken window. I'm going to have to pay for it. I'm going to have to get a new pane of glass and put it in. And by the way, these were the old style windows in an old wood frame where you take them out, you put them in, and you putty it all in around it. So it was something we could do. So what I did was I said, come on, son. And we went out, and he watched while I took the old pane of glass out and then measured it, and also because this building was so old, the windows weren't true. So I showed him how you have to measure this corner and this corner to find out how wide the new glass is going to be so that you don't get one that's too wide that won't fit in to this slightly skewed window frame. And then we called down and ordered a new one and drove into town, and we lived about 20 miles from town. So we'd ride down, got the glass, came back out, put the new glass in, puttied it all in, and then that was the end of it. I didn't scold him about it. He already knew what he'd done. There certainly wasn't anything I was going to say like, gee, I think you broke the glass. Eh? Wow, newsflash. So there wasn't anything to say except to teach him how to repair a broken window pane. And when it was over, it was done. Now, my consequence is I had to put in all that time and effort. His consequence is you're going to have to be there with me. You're not going to be sitting in watching television while I'm fixing a window. You're going to be in my boat. So when my boat springs a leak, you're going to want to bail too. Now there are other situations in which it's far worse. The child has created a situation in which you do need to deal with what I could have done. This I could have said, by the way, and I think I did. Come to think of it, I think I had him earn the money to pay for the glass. That would have been, I don't remember, but that would have been appropriate. Hey, you broke it. It's not a matter of blame or anything. You broke it. You pay for it. So there are a lot of ways in which you can make certain that the consequences that the child experiences convince him that they want to cooperate with you and create as few consequences as possible. How do they do that? Well, one of the ways is to look at consequences as a thermostat. And based upon what response you get from the child, you turn them up, you turn them down. And you adjust the consequences to the right degree of heat necessary to generate the right degree of adult response. Which doesn't mean that I'm going to get it all in one, this isn't like electrocuting them, this is just warming them up a bit. So you vary the consequences to suit the situation with a particular child and get from the child the kind of response that says, yes, I am paying attention to you, and yes, I will work on being more adult about things. Had a situation with a mother who had a son, again, about a 12-year-old. It's interesting how that age seems to begin to precipitate a whole lot of chaos. And she came in. What her problem was that she yelled at her son. That was her major discipline approach. She hated it. She didn't like it, but she did it. She knew she did it. She came in, she says, I've got to do something about this. I am abusive when I yell, because, she just lets him have it. And so we took a particular situation that she brought up. She said, she was illustrating her pattern, which was to tolerate his not doing something, ignoring his responsibilities for a long period of time, and then exploding. The limit of my patience. Only this might be 2 or 3 weeks, and the illustration she gave was that he had been told to clean up his room, and he hadn't done it. And this was typical. It had gone on a week, it had gone on 2 weeks, it had gone on 3 weeks, and then she exploded. And my thought was, well, why do you wait 3 weeks? Now, of course your child is going to consider that I can ignore you. I don't need to be responsible. You'll let me get away with it week after week after week. And then, of course, when she does blow up, how does the child feel? This is unfair. This is unreasonable. Not that, well, I had it coming, but rather, well, why do you do it now? You're unpredictable. I can't count on you. All of a sudden, boom. Now I said, all right, here's what I want you to do, because she was building up to this again, and that's why she brought it up. And it had been a couple of weeks again. And I said, just go home and clean out all the stuff in his room. Because his room was a mess, and that was this problem. Clean up your room. And it was a real mess. I said, just go ahead and clean out all the stuff. Remember I said about putting the toys in a box? This was an older child. Put all the stuff in a box. Kind of the first step to the impact program. Only all we took was everything that was clutter. So she did, and he came home, and then she was telling me about this the next week when she came in. And she just didn't pick it up and put it in a box. She picked it up and put it in the trash. And this included a boom box, I think, that wasn't working. I mean, she just took everything. She figured if he doesn't take care of it, it's gone. He had all kinds of baseball cards and collector cards and stuff. She just took them all, gone. And the trash was coming that day. She did it on the day when the trash was coming, and he came in just as she was finishing up and rolling out, you know those big trash things, full of his stuff. Put it there. She said, don't you touch it. Truck came down, boom, gone. Now, this is that thing about, well, do you tell him ahead of time? Well, this kid had been told for years to clean up his room. He'd been told, and he just ignored it. So her thought was, I'm not going to give him a warning. What does he need a warning for? What he needs to do is understand that you have ignored me for the last time. So this is how she did it, and this just happened to be, as I say, parents need to decide how they're going to do it. Well, it got his attention really fast. And she was in to see me the next day and told about this happening, and he was just, Mom, what did you do that for? And she said, I've been telling you for a couple of weeks to clean up your room. I'm not telling you anymore. And that was the end of the discussion. She walked away. I had told her, don't argue with him. And we'd rehearsed some of that. So I said, well, now what's going to happen? She said, well, now I figure he will start picking up his room. And I said, okay, well, why? Well, because of what I did. Now, a lot of parents would think after what she had just done that that kid would get busy and pick up his room. I didn't believe that that would necessarily happen. For this reason, he was used to Mom exploding every so often when she got fed up. Now, maybe this was a little different than her screaming and yelling at him, but it was still, from his point of view, another explosion. My guess was that he would go back to assuming, now I can let it go for a while. She thought he wouldn't, so I said, let's not take a chance. Let's build on what you're doing and get the change you want starting tomorrow. And let him know that not only did this happen today, but that I am a changed mother, and this is going to happen again tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. But I said, but here's how we do it. Because at the same time, you have to be reasonable. You've got to give him some time to adjust to the fact that, yes, it is different, and yes, I must take Mom seriously, and yet still make it a point to him that it's his responsibility. So I said, when you go home today, go in his room, anything that's out, of course there couldn't be much out because we only had 24 hours to mess it up. I said, whatever's out, pick it up. Put it away. Don't throw it away, put it away. At dinner, if he hasn't said anything before that, at dinner you just say, oh, by the way, son, I was in your room today and there were some things out that shouldn't have been out, and so I've got them. And I said, you will get instant attention. What have you got? And I said, your answer. He's going to ask some question like that because he's going to want to know, what did you get? Whatever it is, however he puts it, you just look at him and smile and say, you'll find out if you get it back. And I said, then you tell him, in order to get it back, your room must be completely cleaned up tomorrow, because if there is anything left out tomorrow, then I will pick that up and I will throw away what I got today. And then you will have 24 hours to get back what you left out tomorrow. And that will be the rule from now on. If you leave anything out, you have 24 hours to get it back. Now, see, that's reasonable. If he picks it up every day, there's nothing left out that he needs to worry about getting back. If he leaves stuff out once in a while, all he has to do to be sure he gets it back is make sure he doesn't leave anything out the next day. But what this does is it solves the problem forever. Mom doesn't have to say anything anymore. All she has to do is check the room every day. It's up to him now to say, I better get responsible and make sure I pick everything up, or I'm not going to be able to control my own choices. Mom will control them. So, I mean, he was real shy, and I said, he will pick up the room tomorrow if for no other reason than to find out what you picked up today. You got his curiosity piqued. Don't tell him what it is. He might decide, oh, I didn't want that anyway. No, you just tell him. You'll find out if you get it back. So she came back in, and that was the system was working, and I said, okay, now just stay with that. You don't need to do anything more about the room. That is your policy. Be consistent about it, and each day the limit is it's either picked up or you lose it. And if you don't pick it up 2 days in a row, then I throw away what you lost yesterday. I mean, you really lose it. And then if 6 months from now he decides to get sloppy again, what will happen? The first day he gets sloppy, bingo, he loses something. And it'll remind him, oh, I can't do that anymore. So you will minimize the amount of time you're putting into something which up until now has driven you nuts and created what she described herself as a very abusive situation. Because she felt she was extremely abusive with him when she finally exploded. Okay, let's talk about something else. And again, in each case I'm talking about how high do you turn the thermostat, and I leave this up to the parents. Some want to really go at it with a shock value. Others are not that way. And that's got to be your personality, and you need a system that you feel comfortable with, one that you'll live with and stick with and not back down from. So I had I've had a lot of situations with dishes, because that's one of those things. Do the dishes. You know, take out the trash, do the dishes, clean up your room. Standard stuff. Well, let's take the trash. That's a good one. I was talking about this at a seminar, and I suggested at one point that if the child didn't take out the trash, take it in and put it on their bed. So when they come home, it's pretty obvious I didn't take it out. And I said, don't say anything to them, just leave it there. They're going to have to move it. If they're smart, they'll move it all the way out. If they do anything else with it, then you can take the next step up. But I said, just do that. I had one family that did this. The father hadn't quite understood what I meant. And what he did was he took the trash in and put it on the bed. I meant in the bags. And this kid came home and the trash was all, garbage and everything was all over the bed. He said, boy, it sure straightened him up quick. Well, I said, well, if it worked for you, okay, but I really didn't mean anything that drastic. But just tell the child it's up to you to take out the trash. Now, it's not the child's responsibility to take out the trash. We're going to get into this some under responsibility, but right now, just let me say, it's not their responsibility, it's their task. Because, see, it is still your responsibility. If you don't think that, how many of you here, your mother or father calls and asks you if you've taken out the trash? Show of hands. Not many. Good, good. Okay. Do they assume that it's your responsibility? I mean, now, if you had, if you're in a situation where your mom calls and says, honey, have you taken out the trash? And you say, no, Mom, I haven't. I thought I don't have much this week, and I thought I'd just wait. No, if you don't, I'm going to do that. And, of course, she lives in Nome, Alaska, and it's quite a trip to your place from her place. Well, you see, it's your responsibility, and your parents acknowledge that it's yours, and they do not do anything about it any longer. That's not the case. If your kids didn't take out the trash, you would make sure it happened. So you see, it is still your responsibility. You assign the task to them, and you expect them to follow through on their responsibility, which is to do the job. But the trash is not their responsibility. It's doing what you tell them to do. That's their responsibility. So, you've got this kid take out the trash. If he doesn't take it out, put it on the bed. You could say, no dinner till the trash is out. There are lots of ways, lots of consequences to get that done. If they're supposed to feed the dog, it's dinner time. If you fed the dog, oh, no, I forgot. Well, go do it now. Well, I'm hungry now. Well, it's like clean up your room. You'll still be hungry after the dog is fed. And you can control that, and you just simply say that these are the consequences. You're in the boat with us. The dog gets fed. The trash gets taken out. These things happen. I'm not going to be suffering the consequences of you not doing it and not have you suffering them with me. We're going to be in the same boat, so pick up your bucket and start bailing. Then I talked about the one with dishes in terms of the thermostat. How high do we turn it? Well, I had one mother came in and she said, we were talking about this in a talk I was giving, and she said when she was younger, and probably around 11 or 12, doing the dishes, and she was doing a lousy job and taking too long and everything. Her mother came out and looked at the situation, and she says what she had me do was wash every dish and pot and pan in the kitchen, the whole kitchen. She took it all out, put it on the sink, and said, wash it all, dry it, put it away. And she said, I never again did the dishes in a lackadaisical, half-hearted way. Now, that taught her in one session, and as I say, it doesn't have to be that way, but that's what her mom decided to do. She cranked the thermostat up and said, we're going to be finished with this forever. And from what the daughter said, that's the way it worked out. Mom got her convinced. So, adjust the thermostat where you want it, and there is no one place to do it. What feels, as long as it's not abusive, wherever it feels right to you, do it. I recommend that you start, well, that you are as low on the thermostat as you can be, and that when that doesn't work, then you crank it up a little bit more, and you crank it up a little bit more until you finally get it right, and the child says, all right, I give in, I believe you. But they will believe that more if they know that you'll follow through on it. So tomorrow we'll talk about consistency and how that makes this work. Consequences are important. Very important. And most people, that's what they concentrate on is, well, what consequences will make this whole thing work? But what I'm saying, the consequences are a what, and this is a how. And so consequences are important, but they're only important if we think they're going to happen. I talked to you earlier about practice with my kids on the dishes. You need more practice. How much do we have to turn up the thermostat? Only turned it up one day. But they controlled that by changing their behavior. See, if you'll change your behavior, you can change the consequence. The consequence only lasts as long as it takes to get you to have a change of mind. You're behind in your homework. Okay? That's a good one. You're behind in your homework. Oh, we just got a call from the teacher. Your English teacher said that you've got 5 assignments missing. Well, yeah, I do. I got a little behind here. We've been so busy with homecoming and getting ready for that and building the floats and all, and I just let it slide. Gee, that's a shame, honey, because you know the rule around here, and that is you're grounded until it's done. I'm grounded until it's done? Yes, you know that's our rule. If you're behind your work, you're grounded until it's done. But I'm the homecoming queen, and I'm supposed to be on a float tonight at 7 o'clock. Not if the homework's not done. They're going to have an empty float going in there. They're going to have first runner-up on the float while you're home doing your English assignments that you didn't do. Well, it's 3 o'clock. Well, then you better get busy. But I left my book at school. Oh, very bad planning. That was as bad as planning not to do the homework and hoping that we wouldn't find out about it right away. See, thinking and problem solving. This kid's got some real practice here in thinking and problem solving. You say, well, would you take me to school and get it? No. I'm sorry, that's not my problem. That's yours. Now you don't need to worry about it. What she's going to do, she's going to call around, find one of her friends who's got her book at home, and go borrow that. And hopefully find one that's done 2 or 3 of the lessons so she can copy those. And that's not your point this time. It isn't. It's, you've got to get these done. If she can squirrel it around a little bit, that's all right, because the lesson you're teaching her is don't Don't do this kind of bad planning again. The other we'll get to in terms of honesty and integrity and all of that at a different time. Right now we're focusing on one thing at a time. It's your homework. So she finds out, oh, Susie's got her book. Well, Mom, could you take me over to Susie's house? No, I can't. But that's 4 blocks away. Well, then you better hurry. So now she's running over to Susie's house. She's not only getting mental exercise, she's getting physical exercise. You know, and she's thinking to herself all the way, what a stupid thing for me to do. I mean, we've got this kid really thinking. And we're not doing anything. We're sitting in the living room, reading a book. And so she gets back home with Susie's book. And she gets the lessons done, 2 of which, fortunately, Susie had done. And she gets them done, and here they are, Mom, they're all done. And it's 6 o'clock, and you say, fine, honey, go get showered, get dressed, I'll take you over. And then you do. And on the way over, you do not give her that lecture about, well, young lady, I hope this will teach you a lesson. It's the last time you do this kind of foolishness around me. You know, she doesn't want to hear that and isn't going to do anything anyway. If she isn't going to learn for what you just put her through, she isn't going to learn. So don't say anything except when you get her there and you drop her off, you say, honey, have a wonderful time, and you mean it. Because you've already taught her the lesson. School is out. It's time to be mom or dad again. And let her know that as mom or dad, you hope she has a wonderful time that evening. Because that's the way it ought to be. She goofed up. She straightened it out. It's time to get back to life. So, one other thing came up, and that was a couple of people were asking about what do you do with children who are threatening to run away if you get tough. And that is, again, one of those really tough questions. Because a lot of parents are afraid to really lay down the law or get into even any of this for fear that if I tell them you can't stay out all night anymore, they'll be gone. Or whatever happens to be the thing. And you're usually talking about a child who's become fairly streetwise at this point. But my experience over the years has been that about 80% of them won't do it. Well, no, let me put it this way. A few will really run away. Maybe 5% or less. And I'm saying that's only among the population of people that come to me for counseling. The majority that's left won't. But maybe half of that group will, possibly as much as half of that group, might take off for a few days. But you see, we're talking about a child generally in their mid-teens who doesn't have any place to go and can't get a job. I mean, they can't handle their own life yet. So what do? They run over and stay with a friend. And in some cases, we've got brain-dead parents over there who allow this sort of thing to happen. In that case, depending upon the rules in your state, in California, I say, if that's really a problem, just call them and say, by the way, if my child isn't out of your house in the next hour, I'm calling Child Protective Services and Social Welfare and let them know that you have a child in your home and you're not a licensed foster care home, which is against the law. And that's and I said, and do it, because you're dealing with a parent who has decided that they don't like the way you're disciplining your child, and so they're going to step in. Well, it's not their business. Even if you're doing it wrong, it's not their business. But in most cases, it's just some parent who's, sometimes they even call and say, just want to let you know he's here. I said, don't worry about it. Don't chase after her. Parents chase after them. You chase after them, who's in charge? Who's setting the agenda? It's like that argument. I'll run away, you run after me. Wonderful. It's like a little kid who decides every time you say, come here, and they run. You chase them all over the house. Well, we won't get into that one. Let's stick with this one. So you got to run away. Or we've got a child who threatens it. And that's what I want to deal with this time. I tell parents, okay, let's look at the risks. The risks are this. If you get tough, the child may run off. Probably not very far, because one thing most of them don't want is they don't want to be inconvenienced. They want some place where they get a good meal and a warm bed. And there aren't a whole lot of places where they can get that. Generally, it's got to be some of their friends. And then the nice thing is, look at it this way. If your child is as obnoxious as you say at home, these other people aren't going to want to put up with them for very long. And that happens too. And they wear out their welcome. They got 3 friends they can stay with. They spend a week here, a week here, and a week here, and then that's the end of it. And that's in the worst case scenarios. I said, so there's a risk they might go. But I said, your real risk is that at some point they're going to have to come back, and that's where you can really blow it. Now let's take the other situation. Let's take the situation that you do not enforce any rules or laws. You just say, okay, we back off, fine, you know, whatever it takes, and you keep making peace, and the child keeps getting more and more out of control, and more into, I can do whatever I want, I can have door 3 anytime I want around here, and if they start to give me any static at all, I just threaten, I'm leaving. And they cave. I said, what kind of a child are you going to have? What kind of a child are you going to have out of this? Irresponsible, undisciplined, blaming the world for everything that's wrong. If it isn't my way, it's somebody else's fault. A thoroughly obnoxious grown-up that, under the worst conditions, is probably going to end up in jail, which is the only place we have left as a form of a playpen for people over the age of 25. And at best, they're just going to be a person who is never going to have very good control of their life because they never learned how to be responsible and self-controlled. So he said, look at it this way. The risk of them running away isn't really as great as the risk of you letting them stay home and turn into a total disaster, which will last for the rest of their life, at least under these conditions. If you take the risk, and even if they do run away, in a lot of cases, they're going to turn around and come back. I say, now it's up to you, but I would recommend we take the risk. The IMPACT program is a risk program. So what if they run away? Well, okay. If they run away, what's the difference between that and staying home and never doing anything they're supposed to do, never learning how to grow up? Which is worse? Which is worse, a person who can't read or a person who won't read? Okay. So I try to talk to them about where is the real risk. Then we talk to them about what happens if they do. And I've had lots of cases where this has happened. And see what it is, it's a power play. It's to get you to give in. Oh, you won't let me have my way? Fine, I'll show you. I'll run away, and then you'll come begging on your knees. That's why you don't chase after them. If you know where they've gone, leave it alone. You don't say, okay, we're playing by your rules now. No, we're not playing by your rules. And something that I add to it that most parents don't think about, because, and I'm dealing with 2 families right now where that's the case. Kids have run off. One's a boy, one's a girl. Different families. And I said, see, and you can tell what's going on. In this one case with this girl, they're getting messages from everybody else every day about what's going on. She won't call them, but she makes sure that they know everything that's happening. She's over to friends, you find out every day what's going on. What's the big deal? If she'd gone off to visit a cousin for 3 weeks, she wouldn't be worried about it. So I said, quit worrying. She's got herself in a position now where she is trying to feel out how nervous and anxious you are so she can drop the axe on you. And I said, and you're buying into it because you keep getting all this information from everybody and sending messages back to her. I said, the first thing I want you to do is the next time somebody says whatever, you say, oh, that's nice, and don't give them any messages for her. So he said, well, is there anything you want me to tell her? No. And so what's going to happen is suddenly she's going to feel like she's not in control anymore. And I said, I guarantee you, if you do that with everybody that's getting messages back to her, the next thing she'll do is she'll call you. Because she wants to get back in control. So she'll have some pretense for calling, in order to get you engaged in a conversation where she can then begin to manipulate you again. I said, so here's what happens when she calls. And I'm just going to take one illustration, a simple one, but it can evolve into all kinds of maneuvers. Basically, it'll come back to this. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. You can come over and pick me up now. Now, I'm just going to run the scenario with you. You can come over and pick me up now. Oh? Yeah, I'm ready to come home. Well, honey, you know, I'm sure glad to hear that. And we would like to have you here, but we've had such a problem. And things have been so chaotic here for the last several weeks, months in fact. And we really don't want that to happen again. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for you. We know how unhappy you've been. And so rather than rush into this, we think we better talk this over here, and we'll decide whether or not it's time for you to come home. And then, and this is important, and we'll give you a call back, and then you hang up. And you don't call her. You don't call her that day, you don't call her the next day, you don't call her the next day. I guarantee before very long, unless she's really weird or he's really weird, she's going to call you, because while you're not calling her, who's in control? You are. See, you said, we'll let you know when you can come home. She didn't expect it to be that way. She expected, oh, honey, we're so happy, we'll be right over to get you. We'll let you know when we decide you can come home, and then you leave it alone. And when she finally calls back, and she says, well, Mom, yeah. Well, when am I coming home? Well, what do you mean, dear? Well, you told me 3 days ago that you were going to talk it over and call and... Well, yes, dear, we haven't finished talking it over yet. And you see, now the problem is you've interrupted that. We're going to have to start all over. So please, honey, don't call until we get all finished, and then we'll call you. Click. How do you think that kid is feeling on the other end? Remember, this is somebody who has normally been able to jerk this family around by the nose. All of a sudden, oh, they got her. Don't call until we call you. We're going to have to start talking all over again. She's beginning to even wonder if she got the right phone number. I said, then what you do is you let her steam a little while. Not too long. I mean, you have to kind of judge it on your kid. Maybe you let her stew for a day. Maybe it's just for a few hours, whatever. And then you call her back and you say, well, we've finished our conversations. And if you have decided for her to come home, if it's different, we're just assuming this is one where you want her back. We've talked it over and we've decided that we're willing to take the chance. However, in order that we don't get back into the same situation we were before, which was very distressful and which was so upsetting for you that you wanted to leave, we don't want you to feel that distressed again. See who we're worried about? We don't want you to feel distressed, because you're in the same boat with us. So I say, in order for that not to happen, we need to make one thing clear, and that is, if you come home, then you are agreeing to live by the rules here. Now, if you're ready to do that, then give us a call back. But please understand that when you step in the front door here, you have agreed to live by those rules. See, you don't want any of this, you have to tell us you're ready to do it. You think, well, why not? Because later on she'll say, well, that wasn't exactly what I said. Heard other people have said that sort of thing? No, you've misunderstood me. We're not going to get into that. When you step through the door, you have agreed that you're going by our rules, and that is unconditional. The act of walking through the door was total agreement. Now, you don't make a big deal out of it on the phone. You just say it and include it in there, so later on when she pulls something and she says, well, I didn't agree to this, you say, no, you agreed to it when we told you if you come home. If you step in the door, you're agreeing to it. So you tell her all that. You know, if you're ready to go by our rules, why, think about it. Don't make a decision right away. Don't rush this. Think about it and call us back. Click. Now, what does she have to do? In order to get home, she's got to call you back and say, yes, I'm ready to come home. What? I'm ready to come home. Under what conditions? Under your conditions. Okay, honey, good. Well, listen, we've got a few things to take care of here. We'll be over in a couple hours and get you. String it out. See? You don't say, we'll be right over. And she says, well, it'll take me a while. It's what I call cats, dogs, and kids. You ever try to let a cat out of the house? I'll get into that in a second. So, you go over in a little while, you pick her up, you bring her home, nothing is said. Everything has been said. Now you just wait for her to get back into her old pattern because that's what she's going to do. She figures, I'm home again, I'll start running things around here again. And when she starts to, you say, you're supposed to clean up your room. Well, I was busy today. Well, then go in and do it now. Well, I don't want to do it now. I didn't ask you if you wanted to do it. I said go in and do it now. Well, I don't see why after that, look, when you came home, you said you were going to abide by rules. Well, I didn't know that that was one of the rules. I didn't tell you what they were. I said you agreed when you came in to abide by the rules. That's one of the rules. Well, I may just leave again. Well, if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. But you're going to live by the rules while you're here. And that's pretty much how it goes. Now, that's not a complete scenario, but that's as much as we can cover here. Now let's get back to cats, dogs, and kids. Cats, dogs, and kids is simply this. How many of you have ever owned a dog? Okay, I have. How many of you ever owned a cat? Okay. Well, to all you animal lovers, you'll understand this. When the dog wants to go out of the house, what do? He goes over and sits by the door, right? And he may sit there for 3 hours. Everybody ignores him. The dog just sits there and waits. Finally, somebody comes by, no, the dog wants to. You open the door, whoom, out he goes, oh boy, I got out of the house, whoopee! You know, and he's so happy. And the fact that he sat there for 3 hours and waited, he just figures, well, that's the way life is. But if you got a cat, when that cat decides to go out, and it goes over and sits by the front door, in about 15 seconds, if you've noticed it, you begin to start feeling guilty about not letting the cat out. Why is it? It doesn't bother us with the dog, but with the cat, somehow we think, I shouldn't have kept the cat waiting. They have a way of waiting that makes you feel like I shouldn't be kept waiting. So you go over and you open the door. And then there's a cat say, Yahoo! Boom! No. No, the cat sits there. Kind of like, now, I will discipline you for not being here waiting to open the door when I got here. And they kind of look out. Like now they're deciding. I thought you already wanted to go out. No, I'm deciding. And so you're standing there, like you got nothing better to do in life than hold a door for a cat that's trying to decide whether to go out. And so I'm deciding. And about that time, they seem to sense how long it can go. Now, I'm the kind that I only go so long, and then that's it. Boom. Think about it some more. Let me know when you're ready. Well, that's the moment when they know, they sense that you're at that point, and you're about ready to close the door. And what do? They stand up. Oh, okay. And they step forward, just far enough to block the door. But do they keep moving? No. Then they stop, and they do another. Let's check the world out there. Is this a world I really would like to be in? How does it look? And now they do that for a while. And there's always this, that temptation. Oh, good, gone. I don't, but you think about it, don't you? Just a little bit. So they do that for a few minutes. And then finally, it's like they know again. They can only push you so far, and then something's going to happen. So then they start forward in that regal walk. I have nothing to do and nowhere to go, and I can take as long as I want while you stand there holding the door for me, which ought to teach you a thing or two about the way you treat me. And then if you got a cat, we had a cat that could go out the door and have 98% of themselves out the door, but their tail is still around the door jamb. You ever that kind? The tail stays in there like, ha, ha, ha. That's when I want to go, ha, 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 and leave this little fur ball right here on the floor. No, I don't. I wait, and then finally, one last flick of the tail, and they're gone. And you can finally close the door. That's when I want to go out and buy a dog. Preferably one that eats cats. Well, dogs, cats, and kids, it's all the same. When it comes to control, our kids are like, we'd love them to be like the dog. You know, that whenever we decide, well, it's time to, and they just, oh boy, I'm ready, Mom, Dad. Instead, what we all got is cats. Well, I'll think about it. You want to get them to think a little more positively, and usually with a little more speed than the cat. So dogs, cats, and kids have some things in common, and it has to do with how you teach them what you want from them. We had a neighbor who had a cat who probably would have been like other cats except for one thing. She had her own system for letting the cat out of the house, which was when the cat was sitting by the door, she'd be strolling by and see the cat, he'd open the door, pick up the cat, whoom, and launch him about 5 feet into life out there. Welcome to the world, and on she'd go. And the cat would kind of dust himself off, and off he'd go. But that was an unusual cat, and I don't recommend that that's what you do with your kids. But what you can do is you can recognize that part of getting them to be responsible and self-disciplined is that, hey, if you're doing it on my time, then you'll do it according to my rules, not yours. So if you don't want to do it by my rules, do it on your time. Do it before you get to whatever the limit is. And if you do, then you'll experience your consequences instead of mine.